If you've been following what's been happening in Huntsville, then you already know that the drama between Tisha Scott and Melody Cherie never really seems to end. It's like no matter how much time passes, no matter how many new things come up in their lives, somehow the conversation always circles back to the same names. And one name in particular, Melody Cherie. Now, what's interesting is that even though Melody has clearly moved on from the show, her name still manages to make headlines every single time Tisha opens her mouth in an interview. And the recent one with DJ Richie Sky is no different. Instead of keeping it light or focusing on her own growth, Tisha once again found a way to drag Melody's name right back into the mix. This time, she decided to revisit old drama, not new issues, not current events, but things that happened years ago. Specifically, she brought up Martell's cheating scandal and claimed that Melody and Martell didn't want the group to talk about it on the show. Now, that might sound innocent on the surface, but anyone who's been watching from the beginning knows that this version of the story doesn't quite add up. Because back when everything went down, Melody herself was the one who was open about the situation. She didn't hide it, she didn't deny it, and she didn't try to keep people from discussing it. In fact, she was the one dealing with all the embarrassment and the public fallout, while Martell was the one trying to control the narrative. So when Tisha sat down and started saying that both Melody and Martell didn't want the cheating talked about, it immediately rubbed people the wrong way. Fans started calling it out because it felt like she was twisting history, rewriting events that we all watched unfold in real time. It wasn't Melody who told everyone to stay quiet, it was Martell. Even Kimmy confirmed that. So why would Tisha bring it up again years later and make it sound like Melody was part of some kind of cover-up? That's what has everyone raising their eyebrows. The truth is, people are starting to notice a pattern. Every time Tisha does an interview, every time she's asked a question that could just be answered simply, somehow it always leads back to Melody. It's almost like she can't help herself. And that's why so many fans are starting to wonder if maybe there's a deeper reason behind it. Because Melody isn't even on the show anymore, so what's the point of dragging her into every conversation? Maybe it's because without Melody, the storylines on the show just don't hit the same. Maybe her name still carries the kind of weight that keeps people talking. And if that's true, then it makes sense why Tisha keeps mentioning her. Because let's be real, the audience still cares about Melody. But here's what makes this situation even more frustrating. Tisha could have handled that interview completely differently. When Richie Sky asked her about where things stand with Melody today, that was her chance to be graceful, mature, and forward-focused. She could have said, "We're not close, but I wish her well," and kept it moving. That's all she had to do. But instead, she chose to reopen old wounds and point fingers again. She brought up that so-called pact, implied that Melody played a role in it, and tried to paint her as someone who was trying to hide the truth. It's messy, and it feels intentional. And you have to ask yourself, what does Tisha gain from doing that? Because if we're being honest, the cheating storyline has been talked about, dissected, and cleared up over and over again. There's nothing new to expose. So why keep bringing it up? The only answer that makes sense is that she's trying to keep Melody's name attached to her own. And that's where this whole idea of no Melody, no storyline comes into play. Because let's face it, the moment Melody's name gets mentioned, people tune in. The moment there's a headline about her, fans start talking again. And maybe that's exactly what Tisha's aiming for. Now, it's not like this is the first time Tisha has done something like this. If you go back and look at her track record, she has a history of taking jabs at Melody. Sometimes subtle, sometimes not so subtle. Whether it's shading her in interviews, questioning her motives on social media, or bringing her up in situations that have nothing to do with her, it's become a recurring theme. And people are starting to get tired of it. Because at this point, Melody has made it clear she's over the drama. She's focused on her businesses, her music, her kids, and her peace. Meanwhile, Tisha keeps pulling her name into mess that doesn't even concern her anymore. And that's what's so confusing about all of this. If Tisha and Melody ever were truly friends, if they ever had real love or respect for each other, why keep doing this? Why not just move on and let the past be the past? Instead, Tisha seems stuck in this cycle of bringing up old issues that have already been addressed. And when you keep doing that, it starts to look less like sharing your truth and more like trying to stay relevant. Think about it. If Tisha really wanted to move forward, she could focus on her own marriage, her family, her personal growth. But instead, every time she has a platform, she uses it to remind people of something that happened years ago. And not just any part of it, the part that makes Melody look bad. The part that can stir up the most controversy. That's why people feel like there's an agenda behind her comments. Because it's not about closure or honesty anymore. It's about keeping people talking. Let's not forget that Tisha herself has admitted she's never been in Melody's shoes. She's never had to deal with her husband's cheating being exposed publicly. She's never had to raise kids while being humiliated on TV or face constant rumors about side chicks and love children. She's never been chased down by the press or dragged online by her ex. So how can she possibly judge the way Melody handled her situation? Melody went through something most people wouldn't even survive emotionally. And yet she came out of it stronger, wiser, and more successful. That's not something to mock or twist. That's something to respect. When Melody went online to speak her truth, it wasn't because she wanted attention. It was because she had no choice. If someone is publicly attacking you, lying about you, and trying to destroy your reputation, you have every right to defend yourself. That's called protecting your peace. And if you look at it from that perspective, you can see why fans get defensive whenever Tisha tries to make Melody look like the bad guy. Because Melody has already lived through enough pain. She doesn't deserve to keep being the punching bag for someone else's storyline. Another thing people are talking about is how Tisha keeps claiming that she and Marsal didn't hear from Melody and Martell for a year during the cheating drama. But what she doesn't mention is whether she or Marsal ever reached out themselves, because that's what real friends do. If you know your friend is hurting, you don't sit around waiting for them to call you. You check in, you show up, you ask if they're okay. So if Tisha didn't do any of that, then maybe she needs to take some accountability instead of blaming Melody for the distance. Friendship goes both ways. And even if we put all that aside, one thing that stands out is how other people in the group have handled the situation differently. Kimmy Scott, for example, has been honest but fair. She's acknowledged the truth without trying to stir up unnecessary drama. Maurice has done the same. Even Marsal, for all his flaws, doesn't seem nearly as pressed about Melody as Tisha does. So why is Tisha still carrying this weight like it just happened yesterday? It almost feels personal, like she has unresolved feelings toward Melody that go beyond the show. Some fans even believe it's jealousy, because Melody has always had a certain confidence, independence, and glow that some people just can't handle. And maybe that's the real problem. Melody represents the kind of woman who walks away from chaos and still wins. She left the bad marriage, built her own businesses, created her own opportunities, and came out stronger. That's power. And not everyone knows how to handle seeing someone they used to stand next to rise higher than before. So instead of celebrating that, they try to bring it down. That's what it looks like Tisha is doing. Not because she truly hates Melody, but because she can't seem to let go of comparing herself to her. But here's the irony in all of this. Even though Tisha keeps bringing Melody's name up, all she's really doing is keeping Melody's legacy alive. Every time she speaks on her, the spotlight shifts right back to Melody. People go online, they start defending her, they start sharing old clips, and suddenly, Melody's name is trending again. Not because she said anything, but because Tisha did. So in a way, Tisha is helping her stay relevant, even without meaning to. And that just proves how strong Melody's influence still is. And if we're being honest, that's probably part of the frustration too. Because even though Melody has left the show, it still seems like her presence overshadows everyone else. When fans talk about Love and Marriage Huntsville, they still talk about Melody first. They still connect her to the show's biggest moments. And if the show can't keep that same energy without her, then maybe that says something about its current direction. Maybe that's why people feel like Tisha's comments aren't just about Melody, they're about trying to keep the show alive. Now, fast forward to 2025. So much has happened, people have grown, new opportunities have come up, and yet here we are still talking about the same infidelity storyline. At some point, it starts to feel repetitive. Fans want something new. They want to see growth, forgiveness, new projects, new storylines, not the same recycled tension. And the more Tisha drags this old drama back up, the more it looks like she hasn't moved forward. Meanwhile, Melody's doing her thing. She's focused on her career, her children, her brand, and her peace of mind. She's not on social media shading people or doing interviews to talk about old drama. She's working, she's winning, and she's letting her success speak for itself. That's what true growth looks like. So when you compare the two, the difference is clear. One woman is moving forward, the other is still stuck looking backward. And let's be real, if Tisha truly wanted peace, she wouldn't use interviews to bring Melody up again and again. She'd simply wish her well and leave it there. That's what grown women do. But instead, she keeps reopening old wounds, reminding everyone of the same drama and trying to shift blame. That's not growth. That's holding on to bitterness. So at this point, it's fair to ask, is Tisha really still hurt from all those years ago, or is she just using Melody's name to keep herself and the show relevant? Because when you strip away all the extra talk, that's what this really looks like, a strategy. And honestly, it's sad, because both of these women could be shining in their own ways without having to be connected by drama. But as long as Tisha keeps mentioning Melody, the comparisons will continue, the discussions will continue, and the headlines will keep reminding everyone of what once was. Maybe that's the real reason this feud never dies, because one person keeps feeding it. And that's the real takeaway here. Until Tisha Scott learns to move on and stop bringing up the past, she'll always be seen as someone who can't let go. While Melody Shari, on the other hand, will keep being seen as someone who outgrew the drama, healed, and built something better for herself. So at the end of the day, fans have already decided who's really moved on and who hasn't. One is evolving, the other is repeating. And that's exactly why this situation still has people talking.